Yeah, thanks, Ben. I guess if I'm not here next year presenting, you'll know that Kilimanjaro didn't really work. So, you people must be getting sick to death of hearing me talk by now, surely. We've done it for 9 years. We're up to season 2013. So, without any further ado, let's have a little look and see what we did in 2013. We started off with it was quite an unusual season. We started off with an absolutely fantastic full profile of moisture, a lot across much of the state, and that's not everybody. There were some areas certainly out east that didn't participate in the joy of this. So we did pretty well to start with. That was early. That was April and early May, and a lot of people got going, and it was absolutely fantastic. We were able to get the crop in. We didn't have that usual. We got the top bit of moisture, but we never met up with the moisture down below. So then we had a little bit of a hiccup in June and July, where we really didn't know. We were getting a lot of heat units dumped on the crops. We were running out of moisture pretty quickly, and none of us really knew what the hell was going to happen. So we went from euphoria, except those in Esperance who were just starting to stack money even higher. We ran out of the euphoria of it, and we weren't really sure how the crops, what varieties, what maturities were going to handle the big dry. Then the rain came, and it kept coming, and the season was looking pretty good. And to be honest, I'm hoping that Ben Bidoff doesn't get any results out of his research for the next 10 years, and he's on frost. So we did really well. We had minimal frost. There were some events, but quite minimal frost. So the season got set up pretty well, and as soon as we get the long, cool, wet finish, that means a lot for grain fill and yields, potential yields. So we did pretty well. So this was a year where we have varieties full expression of their genetic potential. We spray the NVTs for disease, so we try and make sure it is an expression of yield potential rather than inhibited by any nutrition or diseases. So we'll see how they performed this year. So repetition, as I said, I've been doing this for 9 years. It's an extensionist dream, which is, I don't even think there's a word, extensionist, but that's me. But it's an audience nightmare, usually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare area sown, geez, got the shakes up today, compare area sown on NVT rankings, just to make sure that what growers are sowing around the state is actually running in parallel with what the NVT is actually showing. So you remember it's the breeders that are putting their latest material into the NVT, and are they breeding the right stuff for us and the growers adopting? I'm just going to cover some breeder response to growers and market signals, but how long it takes to get to these, meet these responses. Just going to go over some variety rankings, and that's what I usually do, and just a little bit on Met summary. We're going to do a bit of cage fighting. We're going to do some variety versus variety. Good gutsy stuff. I probably won't be here by this afternoon. And just go have a look at a bit of the temperature, because we didn't get any frost, and I just want to show you what that's like, and then I'm going to wrap it up. So what do we use an NVT for? Every year you all come to the NVTs to have a look, because you want to see who's knocking off the top dog. That's what we use it for. So the NVT mission statement is we want to evaluate varieties that can potentially complement or provide superior yield and quality alternatives to the now benchmark variety Mace and the long-serving and effervescent varieties Wild Catchment Klingri. That's not a GRDC statement either. I just made that up, just to bore you a little bit. But that's essentially what it is. We want some, and I'm sure AGT are actually breeding like hell to knock that off themselves. So the NVT and just the fact that all breeding now is really, I reckon, really producing some results for us and for growers moving into the future, because they do listen to growers and they do listen to what's needed. We've been running with ag zones for some time now, and hopefully we'll change the way we look at things. But if you have a look at, if you look at something like Ag Zone 2, it's huge, and what performs south of the Great Eastern Highway is quite different to what performs up in this area, the Ag Zone 2. So they're quite large areas that we're trying to gather how they perform in each area. But we can get trials in the north and south where we're getting varieties that rank the same right across the state, and it's not in Ag Zone, it's not we need to know what causes varieties to rank, what conditions, environments causes varieties to rank. So that's how we'll be talking about it in the future. So area sown to wheat varieties. So I lost that bet to actually Martu from Longreach on getting this much this much market share in the state. And I didn't even bet Steve Jeffries because he's such a shy, unassuming sort of a character and doesn't sort of step forward much. So Mace has got to 53%. We've got Kalyngri sitting around 10. Wild Catcham's about 8, and Yippee still sits around that 10 because that's the one we need down south, and we need something to replace it maybe. Pretty old variety. And Magenta and Stiletto, so long seasons those three, and a bunch of them here. You have a look down here at Cobra and Korak. We're only just getting to know these varieties. Where are they going to fit? What are they going to do? Have they got anything to offer? We'll have a look. Compared to the NVT rankings, so Mace ranks very well. Sorry, area sown is the green bar, and your orange is the ranking in the NVT. So it does pretty well in the NVT, and the area sown is matching it. Kalyngri, Wild Catcham, Yippee, Magenta, they all do very well in the NVTs, and Cobra and Korak, if you have a look where they're sitting, we'll probably see this area sown increase over time. And there will be replacement, perhaps, with some of these other varieties. So we're tracking pretty well, and the two newbies have yet to stamp their foot. So wheat breeder responses, you remember that with breeding, it's not an overnight thing, it's over a few years. And a few years ago, everyone wanted the quickies, and it didn't really work for us. They wouldn't grab the end of a good season, they would finish up too quickly. So they didn't have the elasticity of being able to grab a whole season. They were very terminal. Then we had the Wild Catchams, Mace, well we had Wild Catcham for a while, Mace, Cobras, Koraks, Emu Rock and Westonias. Now, these particular varieties, remember I've always talked about Westonia having 6 tonnes in Mount Barker, so it's a quicker maturing variety, but it has the ability to grab the end of a season should it eventuate. And if you have a look at that, has got that in it, that has got that in, where are we? Yeah, that has got Wild Catcham in it, Cobra's got that in it. So the breeders are grabbing stuff that we actually have and work in the marketplace, trying to improve yield and quality all the time, using what we've got rather than going off into the blue sky. We've got some longer season material around now. Yippee has been around, this is like sterling barley, it's been around for 100 years. So we've had Magenta have a go. That entered the marketplace, unfortunately, in a period of short seasons, didn't do too well. Now we've got Harper and Trojan. Now these have all got to be treated along these lines. They are long season varieties, so you've all requested them. You all need a Yippee replacement, improving on rust resistance and yellow spot resistance and so on. So this is what's coming through the system now. And then there's the, I probably shouldn't have even had it imposed, that's not here anymore, but the Cord, Jussica, Grenadier, IMI types. There is a requirement or a request that we have those so we can do the barley grass and the brome grass controls and so on. But they're still a bit behind in terms of giving us up their sort of yields. And Kalyngri, Aranera and Fortune, we've been working with these for a long time, and I'll discuss those shortly. So I guess we've been talking about Kalyngri for a long time, and I've talked about Fortune for a long time, 2249 and so on. And when you're getting a one-to-one sort of a line of yield, and if what is there available and going forward is not much better than, delivering a lot more than the existing benchmark variety, it just doesn't get adopted. So that's what's happened. We have not seen Kalyngri being replaced yet. The market signals haven't forced us out of it, and we have not had anything that will come up and belt it out of the park as yet. So that's why we still keep seeing Kalyngri around. If you have a look here, this is just the real yield rankings, and this is the rank, an average of the ranks, and I'll talk about the meta in a minute. But what we're looking at here is if you look at Mace and where it's performed right across the board, and this is just in 2013. So snapshot again. It's not long-term analysis. This is just this year, a bit of a snapshot, and it's a it's a long growing season. So if you have a look at Mace and how it's performed, pretty good right across all zones, even in your 1 and your 4, where are we? 4, which did have certainly some dry parts to the season. Magenta, we often see magenta, its rankings, 9s to 15s in any other year, but being a long season, it's come up and it's done very, very well, even up against Mace in a lot of the zones. So long season, it was able to finish off and show its potential, but we know what happens in a shorter season. Westonia, didn't do as well, but Wild Catchem is sitting exactly where it's been for the last however many years. It's still not a bad performer, and it's what's been used as a base plate to breed some of these new ones. Korak, I guess that's in place that we're looking for something quick, and as I said, that can grab the end of a season. Korak has got an unusual ability to be able to grab and has got high end yield potential, like a Westonia used to have, and also has the ability to handle terminal drought. So this particular variety, particularly we'll talk about it in Ag Zone 2 and 4 in a while, but that's going to have a place. And if you have a look at your yield rankings here, they're all sort of mid performers and nothing fantastic yet out of the Emmys. If you have a look at this is your 2009 to 2013, and using Mace as your 100% line. And if you have a look at your Magentas, over all of those years, you can see where Magenta's sitting. Number of trials there and percent yield compared to Mace, or compared to Mace. So there's your two columns there. So if you have a look and see how Mace has set itself as the benchmark, and then compare something that's similar in maturity, something like Cobra, that's Carnamar maturity, and Korak, which is a little bit quicker, but ability to handle all types of seasons over 2009 to 13, it's performing pretty well up against Mace. Wild Catchem is sitting exactly where we've seen it sit for some time, at about 4% off the pace. So everything's panning out okay as far as if you have a look at snapshot for this year and understand why we had the long season varieties perform, and if you have a look at how it's performed over a reasonable amount of time. So if you have a look at Korak versus Mace, and it's almost a one-to-one line, but if you're having a look at, so up this side here, you've got your yield, tonnes per hectare, and of Korak, and along here you have Mace. So there's your average line, and Korak still bombs around either side of that line and doesn't do too badly, even out at the higher end yields. It can handle terminal drought, it can take advantage of a season extension. Just don't wander into black point prone areas. So if you're getting pretty good yields in high rainfall areas and black point prone areas, you expect to end up with some problems there. It's still got that physiological yellowing, which I talk about every year, it's an APW. Cobra versus Mace. Now, Youngie put this one up last year, and there was two aspects to Cobra. Its ability to handle a more acid profile, and its ability to be able to, once you got over that 2.5 to 3 tonne mark, Cobra tended to have a better top end yield than, say, Mace. This year we were not getting any of the influence so much of the subsoil constraints like aluminium or high acidity, I think purely because the roots didn't have to go too far for moisture most of the year. But that is exactly what happened last year, and this is across all MBTs in 2013, and that's pretty much what happened last year. Trojan versus Yitpi, again, we haven't seen much of Trojan, it's just rolled onto the scene, and comparing it to Yitpi in terms of yield, and you've got to be really careful here because, as I said, this is a snapshot, it's very, very limited data, but it looks like it's performing fairly well, a little bit better than Yitpi over this particular season, and remember, it was a long season. Fortune and Kalingri, it's basically a one-to-one line, and as I said before, why are we going to change varieties if it's not offering any huge advantage? Only quality, and the market signals didn't tell us to get out of it because of quality. There is quite a lot of activity in the noodle market area, and you've heard me talk about those numbered lines in the NVTs, so there's some pretty good stuff coming through shortly. Harper versus Yitpi, we had a look at the same thing again. It was almost a one-to-one type line of Harper and Yitpi yields, and two things: you need consistency of yield over seasons and environments, and you need good consistency of quality over seasons and environments. And this particular, I'm not sure really what happened here, but I haven't analysed it enough, but there's a couple of areas where screenings jumped up. And if you remember back to magenta, how we handled magenta, it went into a season where, well, a group of seasons where it just didn't get the growing season it needed. And that might have been, you know, Kalyx sowing it late or something horrible like that. But essentially, it's not too bad, but, you know, just got to be aware we've got to have consistency of quality and yield. Here's the mins and max. So here's your maximums and here's your minimums. Here's your zero line. So Minginoo, that never gets a frost anyway. Cunderdin, we touched the line a couple of times, but it was just a pleasure not to have to worry about that, about frost. And there's the Gibson trial location, and those blokes don't get frost either. So we just have trouble getting through those crops, yields. So as a wrap up, it was a great year for the longer season varieties, and those with an ability to take advantage of an extended season. So we've seen everything expressed, and it's not going to happen year to year to year. So just remember that, and make sure you have a look at more long-term analysis data to make sure you see how they perform on average over environments and seasons. It's business as usual for the noodles and the mids, and there's a potential fashion change for the long season. So hopefully we will get a Yippee replacement, and it'll be something that fits in there, got a better disease packages, better yellow spot, and can be used equally for frost risk management. And we continue to wait for the new improved IMI lines suite of varieties. So the NVT performance, where the varieties that perform well in the NVT are correlating to the area sown. Remember, we still get frost. So with that huge sowings of mace around the state, it's something you've still got to be aware of, particularly south of the Great Eastern Highway and the frost-prone areas. I know we've been doing very well with it, but just be aware that you still must manage frost or think about frost or have it in there as a management strategy to get around it. So the maturity of mace maybe not quite what you're looking for in all areas. It's not all things for all people, so just be aware of that. The next frontier is dry sowing. As far as the NVT goes, we don't dry sow, and I think it's something that we really need to consider. And what does that mean in terms of variety performance? We're just going to make sure we get the weed-free stuff. We have a bit better understanding, a really good full understanding of variety phenology, as maturities and developments, and how they perform in a range of environments. And just as I said, we still get frost and we still have short dry seasons. So just consider that when you keep varieties and what you're going to retain and what you're going to reject and what you're going to bring on. And remember, as I always say, use a variety that you're making money out of, keep it and benchmark against it. Don't holus bolus ditch. Thank you.
Cobra versus Korak. How does Cobra fare in a drier, shorter season?
Sorry, what was that?
How does Cobra fare in a drier, shorter season?
If you had a look at that yield line that I put up, say against compared to mace, in the drier seasons, the shorter seasons, the tougher seasons, I don't think Cobra is as good a scrapper at the bottom end, and it also has. It didn't show up as much this year, but it also has grain weight issues when it's down at the bottom end like that. But you give it a good run and a good season and above 2.5 tonnes, and yeah, it's as good.
Oh, Tony Sash at Bancoven. Peter, I was just wondering if you could comment on Emu Rock, particularly relating to Fusarium and how that rated.
Emu Rock falls into a funny sort of an area. If you have a look at its performance in the NVT over time, it's never really shot any lights out. And I think it's a lot to do with the fact, so with mace and the Koraks of the world at the moment on board, Emu Rock was in amongst that. Those two varieties are able to handle wetter seasons and utilise moisture throughout a season and finish off, whereas Emu Rock I think is a little bit more terminal than both those two varieties in terms of getting top end yield potential. But it's a good variety. It's got excellent seed size for drier regions, and I guess at the, below 2 tonnes, below 1.5 tonnes, Emu Rock's as good as anything.
Pete, just even though you got prophylactic disease spraying, did you see any expression of the leaf slate come into any of your varieties, particularly Mace and some of the other ones where we're question mark over leaf rust?
No, it didn't, Craig, not this year. Our prophylactic spraying occurs at a Z3.1-ish and Z3.9, and that's across anything that's showing any level of disease, and this year it was almost across everything. And we didn't get any expression of leaf rust, and I don't think there was any expression of many diseases. Actually, I think there was a trial at York that wasn't sprayed, and that showed variety performance in relation to the presence of yellow spot, I think it was. So I think ours were fairly clean, and I wouldn't be able to make a comment on any of the leaf rusts, rusts or any other diseases.
Peter, Norris, Stewart and Burjo, just don't bring any Kilimanjaro top of the world weather back with you when you come. Mace is pretty quick obviously for western areas, and just wondering what's sort of in that bracket that might push it out other than the named ones. IGW 4012, has that got any promise? I'm
not allowed to talk about those, Norro. You know that.
That's sad.
I'll get dragged otherwise.
Fair call.
Look, we've talked about those sorts of. There is a good suite of material coming through, Norro, and I'm sure this time next year we'll be able to talk about them.
Darren Moyer, Borden. You mentioned the replacements for Yippee, Trojan and Harper that are coming through. How many more years of data do you need before we can feel confident that they're a good replacement?
I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist, but each of the breeding companies that are working with those have had them in their system for a while. They're up into their stage 3, stage 4 and productions. So from the NVT point of view, I can only talk to what I've got, and this was sort of a 1 year, quite a long season, so it actually suited both of those varieties very well. And what we need to understand is what happens, like if you look at Trojan, I don't think Madhu likes to see it go too much past the 15th of May as a sowing time. And I don't know enough about Harper to know whether that needs to be treated the same. And for us in the MVTs, we can't, when we start getting these types of varieties in there and suited to that area, we have to grab the early sowing time so we can actually evaluate it, so over a longer season. So for me, it's just, it's a lot more comfort to me. Mace was a good example. Like I was a sceptic right from the word go. And, and once you get to know and understand the variety and see it perform over time, and you're getting the breeding company's data in conjunction with NVT, you can get a pretty good story. And that's where I say, if you want to try it, bring it in as against your benchmark, current benchmark against Yippee, and look at your sowing times and see what you get out of them.